or good night, depending on where you're at in the world. We know we have listeners or viewers all over the place, so don't want to leave anybody out. Today's episode is called Node to Joy,
No to
which is a reference to
joy.
a song. We thought moving into the holiday seasons, Ode to Joy is something we just kind of hear a lot as far as common melodies. So we thought to make the pun.
Yeah.
Actually, I thought to make the pun. I'll take full credit for that one.
And I
Sorry,
loved it.
everybody.
It's great. It's
Well,
the theme of today. It's gonna be a nice casual conversation, just laid back. So I thought it was appropriate.
that's right. That's right. Super laid back today. We're actually just going to dive into talking about nodes, what they are, why they're important to blockchain technology, maybe even how to set up your own a little bit. But we don't intend to get too deep into the weeds. We just want to give everybody a nice, firm structural understanding at the fundamental level of what nodes are and what they do. So before we jump into all of that, I do want to mention Roundly X. Gingerly is sponsored by Roundly X. We have good friends over there, and they do a wonderful job making a simple to use app that allows you to round up your purchases into, say, Bitcoin or any other digital assets that they have added, which is surmountable or a large amount. With just spare change automatically. It just rounds up to the nearest dollar. This set it and forget it tool allows you to DCA and to build wealth safely and conveniently over time. And it actually helped John pay off his Subaru in a time of financial stress, which is pretty awesome. You can go and sign up with code Gingerly to get an extra $4 of BTC after your first roundup. And if you're outside the US and waiting for roundups in your country, you can actually go ahead and start using Roundly X's idea bumps, which are these market alerts that get sent straight to your phone so you can stay ahead of the market movements and hopefully profit some more. And without further delay, Nick, why don't you run it?
Whoop whoop. Nice. I love
think
that.
we heard you singing along a little bit there.
Yeah, just a little bit. I couldn't help myself.
It's so catchy.
Our producers did such a great job with that. I'm impressed every time it comes on.
Yeah, I'm always happy with it. So tell me about nodes. I'm interested in this topic because I'm still building a fundamental understanding of blockchain technology, and I understand it enough to believe in it and understand where it might be able to take us in the future. But when it gets into the technical stuff, I mean, I feel like a gamer going, yeah, I could build a game. It's like, nope, game dev is this whole big rabbit hole. Just because you play video
Yeah.
games doesn't mean you know how to do that.
Yeah.
So why don't we just start with some basics? I mean,
Yeah.
Bitcoin's a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, and it runs off of a decentralized network made up of these things called nodes.
Right.
What's a node?
That's a great question. A node is basically a validator or a copy of the entire blockchain. When I first heard the analogy, it was like back in the day. I'm dating myself here. It was like probably 2014 ish, and people still balanced checkbooks back then. And so the analogy used to be that it's like a ledger, and nowadays you say a ledger, and people are like, "What's that?" But like, my mom used to balance the check, or still does, balance the checkbook by hand. And the ledger is just the full collection of all of your financial transactions, and you keep track of it so that you know what money you have, essentially. And that specifically with Bitcoin being a digital system, the most important thing is preventing double spend, or that was like one of the largest first problems that we wanted to solve, which is essentially I can't buy something from you with this dollar and then go and buy something from my other friend with the same dollar, right?
Right.
And that's easier to do with digital money because it's not like physically represented. And so Bitcoin had to overcome that problem, and the solution was pretty much a node.
Okay, so can Bitcoin exist without nodes?
I would say, well, it's hard to not get too technical with this question. If you
Okay.
really want to dive in and like get into some really crazy theoretical arguments, go look up Jimmy Song on Twitter. He has written some crazy Twitter threads about how Bitcoin could exist in a variety of extreme circumstances, even down to like having, China control 51% of the nodes or something like that. Or, what would happen if we lost electricity and could Bitcoin theoretically still exist? All that crazy stuff.
Right.
The easy answer, in my opinion, is no. Like Bitcoin as we know it now really can't exist without nodes. Because a node, I think the first thing that I want to do is kind of get into like a more simple definitions, because it sounds, hackery, like tech, kind of
Yeah.
mystical. When people say nodes, you're like, ooh, that sounds super official. But it's really not that. It's not that big of a deal. And it's also misconceived with a mining system. So it's really cool. I want to back up just a little bit. We're referencing Bitcoin pretty heavily in this conversation because it's
Hmm.
the widest known, and both of us like kind of want to prioritize Bitcoin education first. Um, but
100%.
nodes aren't just Bitcoin things. Nodes are validators in any blockchain. Like you can use it in proof of work, which is using your computer's power to be able to validate an effort. So, like with Bitcoin, you put your computer's GPU or CPU power towards solving algorithms that support the network and like validate the transactions. With things like proof of stake, which you might have heard of recently because Ethereum went through this big upgrade to move to proof of stake. And a lot of people think that proof of stake is more environmentally friendly than proof of work, which, if you have any questions about that, go back and watch Gingerly episode 3, where we dive into the environmentalism like arguments there.
Hmm.
But proof of stake uses nodes too. It's just in a different way. So yeah, whenever we talk about nodes, I just want our viewers to think like this isn't just a Bitcoin thing. This is a blockchain thing, right?
Yeah, and
And
I'll
even
go ahead and clarify a little bit from my perspective on that. One of the big
yeah,
reasons that I use Bitcoin as a reference all the time is because it's the first really blockchain tech that was out there, right? Am I wrong in saying that? I mean,
um,
it wasn't
partially
the
like
first, like
yeah,
blockchain existed first, but then Bitcoin actually put it to use in a big way.
right.
So that's
Bitcoin
kind
was
of
like
one of
the
the
first
reasons I
major success. It
right,
was like, were there PCs before like Windows 95? Like, well, yeah, of course, but like Windows 95 was like the PC that everyone's familiar with, right? So when
right.
people think of like a PC, they think Windows, where that's not necessarily the real history of it. And it's very similar with Bitcoin. Like there was lots of cryptographic and even digital currency like ideas that were being experimented with, but none of them took off to the effect that Bitcoin has. And so it's one of the best examples because it's one of the best understood, I think.
Okay, so please continue. You're talking about nodes actually being essentially you can't escape the idea of nodes necessarily with blockchain because and I'm assuming here, but nodes are essentially the decentralizing force
Yeah.
technologically behind cryptocurrencies.
Yep, exactly. So essentially, a node is like it's like your own self-sovereign representation of that particular blockchain. So I'm about to dive into like the two types of different types of nodes that most cryptocurrencies use, but like
Hmm.
I do want to hone in on this idea of self-sovereignty. Bitcoin is built, and people like me and you use Bitcoin because, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, I don't trust the government to handle my money wisely. And I would rather trust math and the algorithm that runs Bitcoin to manage that system and save that way, because I don't want to have to trust another person with my money, right? At the end of the
That's
day.
actually interesting. So your thing is primarily trust based.
Yes.
And I actually do come at it from a different angle, just to prevent words being put in my mouth. Um, I I come at it from a much more philosophical angle, where I think that individual sovereignty is the basis of all of the societies in our world that operate at the highest level. It's the best thing that we've come up with so far. And so
Hmm.
I think replicating individual sovereignty in our financial system is a smart move.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Akin to the introduction of democracy.
Right.
That's what it's going to do. That did for politics what hopefully Bitcoin and cryptocurrency can do for finance.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that both of our reasons are related. Yours is like one level deeper than mine, which I am totally on board with you, by the way. Like I love the term self-sovereignty. I feel like it can be a little uh confusing in general conversation. Like when people hear that, it's not something that people just kind of throw around. So when I start conversations, I like to say, I don't want, do you trust the government? Like most people are
Right.
like, absolutely not. Of course not. We agree, right?
That
Like, yeah,
Bitcoin conversation double check at the beginning where you're like, just so we're on the same page, the
yeah, yeah.
government, we don't trust them, right?
Yeah,
Okay. All
good
right.
or
Now we
bad,
can
like,
talk.
okay. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So then once you start at that level, you're like, okay, well, do you trust your own decision? Like, do you trust how you spend your own money versus like letting the government tell you how to do it? Well, yeah, of course I do. Like, okay, well, what if there was a currency that you knew without a shadow of a doubt the government couldn't influence at all. Wouldn't you want to use that? I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And then people are scared off by like, oh, well, then I can potentially lose it and all that kind of stuff. But that's a conversation for another day, right? Let's just assume that you're okay taking the risk to be able to actually handle your own finances and your own money. You're okay being self-sovereign or actually responsible in a good way, right, for your own resources. Then you start pulling threads. Oh, this is a great, Nick. Thank you for sharing this. This is one of the best books on self-sovereignty that I have read so far. A lot of Bitcoiners read this book. Highly recommend it. So yeah, let's toss that into the resources list for sure.
Yeah, I need to actually pick up some of these books.
Yeah,
because a lot of this has been generated out of my own crazy brain.
Right.
So I need to actually get some other input.
Some litmus tests, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
that and the crazy Bitcoin Standard, both really good. But so anyway, we've said in lots of our shows that when you start asking questions about, what is money, what is Bitcoin, you start asking questions like, how is the government influencing my money, and what can I do to change it, and how does Bitcoin influence all of these other things? And you start getting to know it, right? Like, so even we just recently kind of figured out using a cold storage with private seed strategy, right? And I think everyone watching this show should consider doing that. Like, if you have Bitcoin, get it off of an exchange, practice actually using cold storage and like your own private seeds, because that's being personally responsible for your assets, right? You're taking control of those.
Exactly. And all of that comes back to the basis of property ownership, right?
Yeah.
Without some degree of property ownership, we don't have control over ourselves and our own lives and our own families and the people that we care about at all. It's just given to somebody else. And what happens is this, I'm sorry, I'm getting a little bit esoteric, but what happens is we actually give responsibility up, and then that group, whoever you're giving responsibility to, now has control. They're your parent now, right? That's the difference between a parent and a kid. Is the parent has responsibilities, a child doesn't have to grow up with that, which is the way it should be, right? They should be able to live their lives, but they also have a bedtime. Just like in North Korea, they have a bedtime, right?
Yeah.
That's how those things develop on a societal level, whether we like it or not. People are not all peachy keen all the time.
Yeah.
So that's why I moved my stuff into cold storage, just to prevent other people from taking responsibility over my finances, like some of the things that have happened in the very recent past, and being used irresponsibly.
Right, exactly. If you have heard about the FTX scandal or Celsius or Voyager or any number of other things that's happened recently, it's because people wanted convenience over security. And honestly, that's why that the world is in the state that it's in today. Not to get too esoteric myself, but we have prioritized convenience over security. And so here we are, we've got both hands tied behind our back, and now we're like, why can't I do anything? It's like, well, we've been asking for this for years. Anyway, all that aside, this whole tangent is to just kind of come full circle back to the node, right? And so we're like, what is a node? It's related to Bitcoin. It's like anybody. So here's something I haven't said this. Anybody can run a node. Literally anybody. Like, if you want to own a copy of the Bitcoin blockchain yourself, time to spin up a node. And why is that important? Well, nodes are the things that actually verify that all of the transactions are accurate. So I have a copy of the Bitcoin node because I started realizing I'm moving my money, even when I'm moving it to cold storage, there's another level of trust that's in there that I didn't like. And that is, if you're using Bitcoin and you're transacting, the person that processes that particular transaction is a person that's out there, kind of like the cloud. You know how we say, oh, we store stuff in the cloud? That doesn't exist. The cloud is just somebody else's hard drive. That's all it is. It's convenience for security again. So when I started realizing that, I was like, oh my God, like when I'm transacting Bitcoin, I'm trusting like Electrum Wallet or Blue Wallet, or both very good services, right? By the way, check both of those out, Electrum and Blue Wallet. Even like Samurai Wallet, all of these open source, like very trusted Bitcoin only companies. But I have to trust those people that they're going to actually process my transaction and do it accurately. And so I started being like, man, I really kind of want to run my own node because I don't want to trust somebody else to like actually handle my transaction. And that's the beauty of it. If you spin up this tech, you can confirm your own transactions more or less.
I would imagine, and let me know if you've done this. I guess actually you kind of did this with me when I came down for Thanksgiving that one time. Is I think that also having a node allows you to demonstrate Bitcoin in a way that lay people can be like, "Oh, I see what you're doing now." Like you've got a copy of every single transition or transaction that's ever been done, or maybe not, per the different types of nodes that we're about to talk about.
Yeah,
You've got a record of what happened, right? So you're looking straight into, instead of going, "Hey, Bank of America or whoever, how much money do I have?" And they say, "Well, you have this much money." You can go, "No, I check the network. I know exactly
right.
how much money I have, whether you tell
Yep,
me that's the truth or not. I can verify
right.
that for myself."
Exactly. And something else that I think is even more important. So I like if someone asked me what's like the most important part of Bitcoin to me, I would lean on the 21 million part. Like there
Mhm.
are only 21 million Bitcoin that can possibly ever exist. Several of those million have been lost, several have been locked, but that's the thing. Everyone's like this is one of the biggest value props for Bitcoin. And if you keep asking our logic of like, well, why should I trust you? That's a good question. Like people are just telling you that information. How can you actually determine for yourself that that's the reality? Well, you spin up your own node. You download a copy of the entire Bitcoin blockchain. And then once that's downloaded to your device, you can query and say, how many Bitcoin are in this blockchain? And it'll take it 6 or 7 minutes if you're running fast, and it'll spit out an equation and tell you the balance. And
Yeah.
don't take it from me that it's 21 million. Go spin up your own node and verify it for yourself. But it's really affirming, to be able to ask the tech, is this true? And it says yes.
Yeah. Well, and we also see this with other chains as well, right? So like if with Ethereum, it was 2.0 just came out, right?
The proof of stake. Yeah.
Yeah, the proof of stake. So now people are actually watching those nodes
Right.
and running essentially what would you call it, like a survey or a double check or a what do you call that in finance when you
Like an
uh,
audit.
yeah, an audit. They're auditing that chain going, okay, do I still think this is a good idea or do I not anymore?
Right.
What's actually going on? So it has that extra level of transparency where you can see through it and actually do that if you're running a node.
Right. With Ethereum, though, I'll just make a quick note here. But the differences between proof of work and proof of stake are really in the decentralization part. And with Ethereum, there was this big, I don't know if it's still up on Twitter anymore, but Pierre Rochard is an incredible Bitcoiner. His content that he writes is amazing. I can't remember where he's at right now, maybe Kraken or something like that. But he went on this crusade to try and prove what the Ethereum supply is because believe it or not, no one actually knows what the exact Ethereum supply is because
Mhm.
of the nature of its node running and its centralization. There's only a small group of people that have run nodes and have supported the Ethereum network because it's so expensive, honestly, and because it wasn't built like Bitcoin was. But he could never verify it. Like there was this huge conversation. Ethereum maxis were getting extremely angry. They were like, "Well, you're just attacking us." And he was like, "No, I swear to God, like I'm not attacking you. I just want to know what the supply is." And he even funded like research to try and like make this happen. And no one can ever do it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Nick is reminding me. If you check out the other Bitcoin live show, 3D changes perspectives. He has a really cool episode on proof of work versus proof of stake, and the Ethereum transition. So yeah, there you go. Thanks for pulling that
Yeah,
up, Nick.
and he
Episode
does
3.
a much better job of digging into the weeds than we do.
Exactly.
We're
If you want
we're
technicals,
gingerly for a reason.
exactly right. Yep. If you want technicals, 3D show is where you should look into that. So thanks, Nick. That yeah, definitely check out that show so we don't have to explain all of that. But
Cross
so
promotion.
yeah, totally. Bitcoin Live Network, y'all. You got to support all of the shows. So yeah, but anyway, moving on. So now we're gonna like actually dive into the more like depth of what a Bitcoin node is, because I think, like we said, we're focusing on Bitcoin. That's what we consider to be our priority, especially for beginners. If you're watching this and you're new, do your research on the Ethereum stuff if you want, but like on this episode, we want to focus on Bitcoin nodes. And in my research, when I was preparing for this episode, I found an amazing article on bitpanda.com. Nick, if you wouldn't mind bringing that one up. It's an 8-minute read, they say, but honestly, like I skimmed it pretty quickly, and it's Like it's great. It's one of the best descriptions of a node that I have ever read. So I'm going to use that heavily for our conversation moving forward. And if you want to use, like if you're watching and you want to dive in, definitely check out this article here. So I alluded earlier on that there are a lot of misconceptions about nodes. One of the biggest ones that honestly, so I'm an OG and I make this mistake all the time. I need to be more clear about the fact that miners and nodes are the same thing. They're both validators, but one of them actually mines transactions and can get rewarded for solving the transaction blocks, right? So
Right.
miners, they devote their GPU, CPU power to solving the Bitcoin blocks that get produced every 10 minutes that allow transaction to happen. And then if they solve that block, they get money for it. That's a mining node. A validator node does not get any rewards, but it has the entire Bitcoin blockchain. And then it has, now there's like really cool user interfaces that you can use to explore the blockchain, to build your own apps on top of like the blockchain. If any geeks are watching and you've built your own like Minecraft server using a Raspberry Pi, it's a very similar kind of setup. It's like you don't have all of the benefits of like a Minecraft, large, I don't know what you would like, a game based server, right? That's like infinitely large and can do all this stuff, but you yourself own the control over the server and can make really cool tweaks and all that kind of stuff. So when we're talking about a node today, we're not going to be talking about a mining node. We're going to be talking about a validator node, and that is a difference. But it's important to note that like at the base layer, the tech is pretty much the same. It's just a copy of the blockchain, right?
Gotcha. So just to get, because terminology is always an issue with tech, right?
Yes.
So we call those mining nodes full nodes or master nodes. Is that how that works? Because I
Not
skimmed the
master
article,
nodes.
but
Master nodes is something totally different.
okay.
And we
So
can
a
we can
full
skim on
node
those. A
has the
full node,
ability to mine.
yes, yes. So yeah, so if you look into this phrase in the Bitcoin Bitpanda article is good. The term node and full node are often used synonymously. There's actually a difference between these two things. According to the Bitcoin core documentation, quote, a full node is a program that fully validates transactions and blocks. Almost all full nodes also support the network by accepting transactions and blocks from other full nodes, validating those transactions and blocks, then relaying them to other full nodes. So I would say we need to back that up. A full node is not a mining node. A
Okay.
full node accepts transactions and keeps a full entire copy of the blockchain. By comparison, like a light node, which or not a full node, they only verify like block headers. Like they don't have, so each block has like microtransactions that's associated with it. And then also a lot of times you'll only download X amount of data, like on a gigabyte or like a storage capacity basis, and
Right.
not download the full thing because you want to save storage space. And so that's not a full node. That would be considered like a light node or
Okay.
I don't know, a non-full node, if you want to say that.
So the difference. So okay, then we call mining nodes,
And they
and
are
that's the
full
name,
nodes. Yeah.
and they are full nodes. Okay,
Yes.
gotcha. So all mining nodes are full nodes, but not all full nodes are mining nodes.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, cool. We're sorting it out.
Yep. Easy, right? Yeah. So, I mean, again, you can read the article here, but I like how alluded to, there are certain nodes that only they'll download blocks from the beginning of the chain until it reaches a storage capacity limit, and then it'll start deleting the oldest blocks. I mean, it's like on Twitter, you can do that same thing, right? You can set like after X date, I want everything deleted because either you care about your privacy or like, storage or whatever. You
Right.
just auto delete. And it's still a full node because it did, or not, it is a full node because it did the work of verifying and validating all those initial transactions, but it's different than the standard full node, which just has an entire copy like on the hard
Right.
drive.
Which I would imagine would get to be pretty immense fairly quickly
Yeah.
as
Let
far
me,
as
you know what,
data.
well, it might take me a second to log in. I was going to log into my node and check. I think it's like 4.5 gigabytes right now, which isn't massive.
So is there any issue with talking about your node specifically?
No, not at all.
Okay. So do you run a full node?
I do run a full node. Yeah. So I don't even know how long it's been. So I went too long in my Bitcoin career without running a full node. Honestly, I thought that it was going to be too difficult. And when I started, it was too difficult. Like back in the day, you had to, you had to know a decent level of code. You had to be able to set up your own Raspberry Pi, like without hardly any instruction. Like pretty much the only tips and hints that were out there were on like forums or Reddit. And so it took hours and hours of like just parsing through stuff, trying to figure out what was right, and if you get something wrong, then trying to troubleshoot that would take even longer. So I honestly was so intimidated. I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. But then a couple years back, I heard of this company called Umbrel, 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 and they made Bitcoin nodes. I mean, as easy as like setting up an Xbox. I mean,
Oh, wow.
if you can set up an Xbox, you can set up an Umbrel Bitcoin node. It's like the coolest, most affordable plug and play option that I've ever seen. There's another company called Casa HODL, HODL, the old term. Yeah, thanks for pulling up Umbrel, Nick. No need to pull up Casa. I want to focus on Umbrel. Casa was like a little bit more expensive, and Umbrel was like, we know that Bitcoin maxis like saving lots of money, so we're just
Yeah.
going to essentially on their website. You can check out their website there, and it'll give you a like step by step. Buy this piece of hardware. Like do this action with that piece of hardware. Click this button to install, and you're done. And like they walk
Wow.
you through the entire process. And I had a node like I was downloading the Bitcoin blockchain within less than 10 minutes. It was
Wow.
it was incredible. So I highly recommend it, even if you know absolutely nothing about nodes at all, and you're like, I've done no research. I'm just gonna like see if I can set this up. I guarantee you that you can make an Umbrel node work.
So I'm gonna probably be doing this, maybe not in this month, but hopefully next month.
Yeah, for
I'll
the
probably
holidays and
start
such.
running. Yeah, I'm gonna kind of wait till things get settled back in
Oh, nice.
January, just so
Oh,
I'm
real
not
quick,
all over the
sorry.
place. Go
Sorry
ahead.
to interrupt, but this is the Umbrel dashboard right here that we're looking at. It's extremely pretty. You can customize it. They have a really cool link where you can actually access your node from anywhere in the world using Tor, which is
Oh, cool.
crazy because when you start thinking about that, you can actually route transactions through your own node, even if you're not at home, right? You don't have to be connected
Yeah.
to the same network. You can set up your mobile wallet to always route through your node as long as it's active, which is just mind-bendingly awesome.
So one of the questions that I kind of have in my head is like, let's say I run a node. There is some cost associated with that. Um, what do I get in exchange is the question. Like, what do I receive for running a node on behalf of the network? And you bring up an interesting point because so if I run my own node, I can make transactions happen just from my node. I don't need an exchange or anything.
Yep, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So what's really awesome is that in Umbrel, what you're looking at is like it's an app store, more or less.
Okay.
Yeah, so, Nick's posting in the chat. We've got like lots of resource links in the chat. If you're watching, check those out. You can be learning along with us. But essentially, Umbrel's App Store opens up a wild variety of opportunities for things that you can do, not just with Bitcoin Network, but through the Bitcoin Network. For instance, you can set up it's called, I think, a Raspberry Pi hole, and it may be featured on the home screen there. But it is an ad blocker that is validated through the Bitcoin blockchain that you install at your router level, essentially. And so all ads are blocked from your internet router because of your Bitcoin node. It's pretty.
Interesting.
You can also do that with cloud storage. So if you want to back up photos, you can use the Bitcoin network and your Umbrel node to back up your photos to a cloud service, quote unquote, that you control, that's not third party, that you can verify that you own. You can do that with music. You can even do that with internet devices. Like if you wanted to be able to use smart devices like Alexa or Google, and you don't trust that they're not spying on you 24/7, you can actually buy like, what do you call off-brand smart devices and sync them to your Bitcoin node so that they run off of your own network, not off of Google or Amazon's network.
Interesting.
So we're
Okay.
not talking about monetary value here. It's not like, oh, you're going to earn X% of yield, but the trust that you take away from those corporations that we all say are like squashing us and taking all of our data, you're taking all of that data back because you run a Bitcoin node.
So essentially, how do you put this in simple terms? It's Web3 that is located at your residence or wherever your node is. You're
Right.
taking the internet and making it yours specifically,
Right.
which is
And so
pretty phenomenal to think about, actually.
I want to be specific though. So this isn't an internet service provider. And I would say
Right.
currently that is the biggest, weakest link that blockchain has is internet service providers. Because if you
Okay.
notice, if Amazon Web Services go down, blockchains suffer. But not just blockchains, like people get locked out of buildings because smart devices are controlled by Amazon Web Services, right? Like if you think about all of the things, and this illustration right here that Nick's got up is a brilliant illustration. Check that out. Without Umbrel, you have to just trust that all of the transactions, all of the internet smart things, like all of your cell phone data, even all that stuff has to go through somebody else's server, right? And you have to trust that they're not stealing that information. That's just a fact. We blindly do this every single day.
Yeah.
But if you have your own server that is powered by the Bitcoin network, you don't have to trust anybody. And what's crazy is even with the Umbrel App Store, all of this stuff you can verify. Like I'm not a dev whiz myself, but all of their code is auditable. So it's like
Mm.
there is no level of even trust that Umbrel is going to steal your information. It's literally just a user interface that allows you to do the complex coding things that you used to have to do.
Yeah.
Um, so
They're
yeah,
just a UI basically that they built, and then they charge a one-time fee for you to use those UIs, and then that's it
yeah, and
for
honestly,
straight up
most of the
transaction.
cost to use Umbrel is through like the hardware costs. You just have to buy like a Raspberry Pi and a solid state drive, and you're not going to spend more than $200. And if you feel like your personal data is worth more than $200, well, then this is worth it. you know,
Right. Yeah.
I feel like I lose a lot of people's interest when I'm talking about nodes when they find out that like, oh, I'm not going to be earning like buttloads of Bitcoin by doing this. I'm like, well, no, but like the value of not having to trust these intermediaries is a big deal. And I think it does a lot to improve your self sovereignty, like we were talking about in the beginning.
Well, I mean, I think that we do talk about it in a weird way because Bitcoin has been compared to a Bitcoin specifically has been compared to market security and stuff like that, right? That's what
Sure.
everybody hears about it for the most part, which is one why we run this show, is because we want to correct some of those things and
Yeah.
actually figure it out what's going on with this new technology. But nodes are, I mean, instead of asking somebody, you should run a node because it's great for Bitcoin. The question is, do you have a safe in your house?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
If
if you
you
have a
do,
safe
then
in
you
your
should have a
house,
node.
this is the digital version of that.
Yeah. Exactly right.
And when you start to realize that the things that you have that are internet based, like your money, your identity, your credit card numbers, your passwords, everything is connected now through the internet.
Yep.
We most people just give that stuff to Google and Apple, and we say,
One
oh,
pass.
okay.
You can have password storage on your Bitcoin node too. Why
Right.
trust one pass? Like, don't.
So now that's a totally different conversation, right? It's
Yeah.
like, well, what do I get for having a safe in my house? Well, it doesn't like magically make more money inside there,
Yeah. No, it
but
doesn't.
the money that I have or the sensitive documents that I have or
Yep.
et cetera, is safe and secure.
Right.
Even if my house burns down, it's fire
Yep.
safe. Okay, cool. So, I can put documents and things in there, or maybe a particular Stephen King book that I love, something like that. And if
Right.
it burns up, then my first edition Gunslinger is safe.
Right.
Um, and it's the exact same thing for the internet with nodes via
Right.
blockchain.
Right. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I am actually
100%.
right? I'm saying all
Yeah.
that
No,
right
you're
because I'm
right.
kind of
Yeah.
talking out of
Yeah.
my ass.
No. That's that. You're spot on. Yeah.
Okay,
That's a
cool.
great way to talk about it. I feel like that if, it's just a good to remind to everybody that this show is called Gingerly because we're trying to introduce people to new topics that are daunting and like technically difficult to discuss. I mean, it'd be really easy for somebody who's been in Bitcoin for years to come in and be like, no, you're not technically correct in blah, 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 blah about nodes. And I'm like, you know what? I honestly don't really care. If our conversation is helping these people like that are watching want to go run a node, then we've accomplished our purpose, right?
And
So
not only want to go run a node, but also understand why they want to go run a node. That's
yeah,
the big thing to me, right? And this is coming from sales. When we started doing Gingerly, the big reason was because me and John were sitting around at a family get together at some point, and I was going, I don't understand why nobody's marketing and selling Bitcoin the way that they like in a smart way.
yeah,
And in large part, it's because the people who are working in the space are so smart that it's difficult to bring it down to my level even. And I'm not stupid by any stretch of the imagination, and I
no,
still don't understand all of it. So how do I take this and package it and deliver it to people so that we can actually drive adoption? And adoption is the big thing, right? So if
yeah.
we had, let's say, 100 new people start running nodes, well, we just made the Bitcoin chain way stronger. um,
Exponentially stronger. Yes.
exactly. And the more people that run nodes, the more secure we can know that Bitcoin is, and that's the way that we fight back against tyranny, to be honest. I mean, I
Yeah.
hate to
No,
be
it is.
dramatic about it, but that's what it is. We're fighting
Yeah.
against tyranny that hasn't happened yet.
Right. Yeah, I mean, or has happened, like all of the whole like tyranny of convenience is something that we can't really put a finger on. And
Yeah.
I see both sides. Both sides is such a stupid word these days because it's all just one side, right? Like there's the normal everyday person, and then there's the people who are in control. It doesn't matter what side you're on. Both sides are like, how on earth are we going to fix what's going on right now? It feels like something is wrong. How are we going to fix
Yeah.
it? And it's because we've given
Yeah.
up so much stuff, so much self sovereignty and freedom for convenience, right? So, like you
I'm
said,
guilty.
if even just me too, yeah, me too. Like
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I didn't run a Bitcoin node for years. Like I kind of knew in the back of my head that I probably should be doing it, and then as soon as I started doing some research, I was like, wow, yeah, this is a no brainer. I, I need to be doing this right now.
Yeah.
And once you do it, there's like no looking back. I mean, it's like being able to read. You can't look at a word and not be able to read it. Well, you can't learn about a Bitcoin node and like use Bitcoin and not feel the need to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, like I said, I'm gonna actually get my node started hopefully in January and get that up and running. So I'll probably be back and forth, and maybe we can do kind of like a follow up and
yeah,
talk about what I was able to learn just by setting it up and
right,
playing with a little bit. That would be actually a fun, cool episode to do. So the functionality of a node is all based on, so like Umbrel, for example, has these software pieces that you can use via your node that you're running.
right.
I'm assuming you can't use that software without a node.
I mean, yeah, no, like that's the
Okay.
whole purpose, I guess. Like you
Exactly.
can't
Okay.
using the software without a node is just like using Alexa. That's
Right.
it's
Okay. Cool.
yeah,
Okay. Cool. I just
or
wanted to
like
double check because some apps will be like, oh, we're available on this platform, but you can also just use it over here, which would be fine as well. But
right.
you have to
In
have
that
the
case,
node
you're
in order
trusting
to.
their company. Like,
Exactly. Okay, cool.
yeah,
Okay, cool. So then I guess uh what else do we really need to know? I mean, because we can talk about the permutations of this capability, like
right.
different ways that you can use the softwares and things. But aside from the fact that nodes are basically the lifeblood of the blockchain, and without them the security of it goes away, right? If a
Yeah.
singular entity controls, like you said, 51% of nodes, then they can just reset the whole thing to be whatever they want to, right?
Right. And that's at this
I'm
point,
sure
it's
there's a
like
lot of work
mathematically
involved in that.
impossible to do that with Bitcoin. Like it take more, it's close to the amount of money that's in the world or something like that to be able to take control of the Bitcoin network.
Oh
Um,
wow.
so yeah, I mean, again, that's something that you can go do your research on. Don't take my word for it. Um, didn't somebody used to say that a lot on PBS? Don't take my, was that Reading Rainbow maybe? I don't know. Anyway,
Maybe.
don't take my word for it. It's in a book or something like
What's
that.
his
Don't take,
name?
uh,
Wasn't that oh gosh. he was actually a relatively small part of my childhood, given that I'm a
Yeah.
millennial. He was a
Anyway.
bigger part of other people's childhoods. I was more of like the anime kid. I was
Yeah.
watching samurais and stuff. That's where
Yeah.
I got a lot of my like moral
Yeah.
compass from. Like
Anyway.
take care of the lady and fight off the bad guys. That's what I'm supposed to
Yeah.
do. Okay, cool.
Mission accomplished. Well, yeah. Hey, I mean, if you want to look at it from that angle, like taking care of the bad guys is making sure that you actually have the tools to protect yourself, and like a node
Mm.
is one of those tools. So, I mean, yeah. So I think what do you need to know? Like, what else do you need to know? Anytime that you use any kind of cryptocurrency, if you're watching this show, I want you to think, who am I trusting when I do this action? If you're sending Bitcoin, if you're opening an app to send your Bitcoin, if you're using a particular type of wallet, if you're using the internet, if you're using a blockchain, ask yourself, who am I trusting? And you shouldn't be trusting anybody at the end of the day except for yourself. That's my belief. I think that everyone should be able to have their own decisions, especially when it comes to their own money and data. And taking one step forward to being able to like host your own wallet. Like I mentioned earlier in the show, Electrum wallet. That's one of the like OGest wallets that are still around that are used. And I love them. They're great. At the end of the day, though, you have to trust that the people that created Electrum have your best interests in mind, and they knew that. So they spun up a UI of their wallet that you can actually self-host on your node, so you don't have to trust them. And that's
Mm.
the type of development that I want to see. So yeah, I just want people to be asking like, should I be trusting somebody else in this particular situation? Probably the answer is no.
You
And
know,
then ask yourself what you can do to improve.
I really have to say that since I've been in the crypto space or the Web3 space, there's a lot of people in this space that are really putting their money where their mouth is. Um, what we hear a lot of the time is about people who took advantage of that, right? That's what's in the media. But so many more, there are so many more people out there who are developing and making things that do actually advantage us. They're
Yeah.
like, no, you shouldn't have to trust us. That's what we believe. And we're
Right.
going to back it up with good code so
Yep.
that you don't have to trust us. If
Yep.
you don't want to, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And, it does actually make sense for them to still be like, or you can just trust us and we'll handle some things. That's fine. Offer the convenience.
Yeah.
I fully support that. I'm definitely a capitalist at heart, so I'm totally
Yeah.
okay with that. But it is so nice to have the option and see them offering it as
Yeah.
devs, just being kind of selfless in that way, which is really
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, like, I mean, Satoshi did that. Like, if you think about it,
Yeah.
Satoshi has never really profited from Bitcoin that we know of. It just took a person that really wanted to make a difference coming in and trying to make a change. And like at the end of the day, that's what me and you are doing here. Like, we're not creating code, but we're putting out content, hoping that people who watch it will make some good decisions and, advance society. And I think that if you're watching this, you should feel encouraged that there are people around the world that care about you being able to be the person that you want to be, as free as you can possibly be, and that they're doing work to make that happen, even if you don't know about it. So I think this is a great wrap up, Nick. Thank you. Go read the Bitcoin white paper. Okay. Satoshi talks about nodes. He talks about it talks about why Bitcoin is important. And, it was started in response to a crisis in 2008 that I feel like we've surpassed. Like, we need Bitcoin more than ever. We need Bitcoiners more than ever. And yeah, I hope that our efforts through Gingerly reach lots of people.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Because we need to blow this up as much as possible to fend off the tyranny and keep the wolves at bay,
Yep.
or
It's up to us.
something like that. All right, cool. Well, hey man, you want to make it a short episode? I think the wrap up for me is go read the white paper, do your own research, look into Umbrel. We've got all of these learning resources available, so definitely take a look through them. And if you want to, reach out to myself or Purple Suede 22 on Twitter, and
Tags
we're
are right
happy
here.
to have conversations. We're happy to answer questions. If you want to tell us that we're wrong, we'd be happy to address those concerns. Reach out.
Hey,
We
come on a
love
show. Come
talking to
on a
people.
show. If you think we're
Yeah.
wrong, come on a show. Let's talk about it. I'm down.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Cool. All right.
All
Well,
right, cool.
Pigeon, thanks a bunch for a great episode. Node to joy to all of our friends. Hope you have some great holidays coming up. And with that, Nick, if you would please cue the music.